What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Cave Podcast. I'm really excited for this interview that we have. I'd like to open up and introduce my friend here, Anna Parish. She'll be the one I'm interviewing, obviously. I think we have a pretty good selection of topics that we're going to cover. And yeah, I'm just excited to have this moment.
Yeah,
We're back in 2024. This is our first video this year. It's been a minute since we uploaded, but that's okay.
y'all's videos. It's like there's many here.
Yeah, we only had four, but this year we are having a rebirth and a rebrand. And we have a cave podcast, but there's no podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but there will be. This will be the first one that's on there. So, um, obviously, wherever this is posted, we'll have a link in our bio where you can check out all of our socials. It'll have a link to all the videos that we post, YouTube, Spotify, and hopefully we'll be on Apple Podcasts. Can't make that promise. Um, Also, my friend here has her own podcast that she leads by herself, which I'm sure
Yes.
we'll get into later on. But we'll make sure to leave that in the description as well, and I'll probably put it on the screen somewhere. Don't really know where, but it'll be there. So yeah, if you're ready, I'm ready. We can
I'm
get this
ready.
show on the road. All right, so obviously, um, your name's Anna Paris because I just introduced you. Pretty much, first question, first little topic we'll be covering is, introduction of pretty much who you are, where you're from, how you got to Troy. And so, yeah.
Yeah. My name is Anna. I'm from Auburn, Alabama. I'm 21 years old and I just recently graduated from Troy, a semester early, so I graduated last semester. My major when I was in college was health sciences. So now I'm in like this in between period where I'm working where we are right now. I work at the CSC in Troy. And at the end of April, I'll be moving to Raleigh, North Carolina. Hopefully I'll have a job by then. But I'll be starting seminary in August at Campbell University Divinity School. I got to Troy because I just loved it so much, and I had a great 3.5 years here. And then like for fun, I like to like paint, journal. Um, I like to do things outside, like kayak, hike, uh, walk outside. I don't do a lot of running, but
Don't tell them how great of a whitewater rafter you are.
right. Really can share that story. But yeah, I like to like I'm learning guitar and cross stitching. I keep myself busy.
Yeah, we have to keep ourselves busy,
Hmm.
especially like now in college. Gotta have those hobbies, man.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really important for me. So yeah, obviously, she'll be leaving us and going to a whole different state, which is great. I tell everybody that's been in Alabama forever that once you've stayed here long enough, it's time to go. Once for the world.
Feeling it.
Yeah.
It's time to go.
So I'm sure as we get along in the video, you'll tell us more about, where you'll be at and how you got there. So yeah. So the first real question, I guess, that I'll be asking you is pretty much how your faith kind of started and where did that come from?
Well, I guess like many people in the South, I grew up in church. So, I think like Christianity and my faith has always played like a pretty big part of my life. My parents are just like really awesome and raised us in a church that's like intergenerational. So I really felt like poured into when I was a youth and a kid. I got a lot of wisdom from older people in the church. And my parents always like encouraged me to think for myself, to think like critically, to ask questions, to be curious. And so I don't think like I can talk about my faith now without like acknowledging like and articulating how important my church was like when I was younger. Um, my church is like in downtown Auburn and it has like these beautiful stained glass windows on the sides and the back. And we like had traditional worship growing up, so, like hymns and like organ and piano and I guess like that my roots were really like strengthened and like I was able to blossom in that church because it's really like lively and diverse And those are things that I really admire about churches today because I grew up in a church like that.
Yeah.
Um, I had like really close relationships with my ministers, and like I still talk to them today. So that's really important to me as well.
Hmm.
So I guess like my faith didn't really start like one instance,
Yeah.
but it like built over time through like youth group trips and like making the decision to get baptized. Um, let's see what else. Like I guess like I was able growing up to apply like what my church was teaching me and what my parents were teaching me to my own life. Because I was asking these like deep theological, philosophical questions at like age 5, and like being like literally 5 or 6, and being like, "Is God real?" But anyway, just like um for me, like I've always been interested in Jesus and God and Christianity, and not only what that means for me, but like what that means for other people and how that should look not only in our lives, but like in communities like as a whole.
All right.
So,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of especially like you said down here in the South, a lot of people have started up, being, raised and brought up through church.
mhm,
And for some people, that was good for them. Obviously for you, that was, pretty good for you. For others, they kind of, got away from it because they were in it so long. So
yeah.
I guess it's kind of a hard balance between, growing up that way versus being able to go out, see the world for yourself.
Mhm.
And I think it's really cool that, your parents kind of allowed you to think for yourself and
Yeah.
that, there's this little 5 or 6 year old just asking me, God is real. I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. Had some of those same questions myself when I was your age, maybe not that young, but I was, kind of grew up in the same kind of aspect that you're growing up in.
Yeah.
So, obviously, it blossomed over time and developed to, kind of where you are right now.
Mm.
So, the work that you're currently doing, let's get into that.
Yeah. I'll share like professionally and then personally because my book, I guess, is like, and my podcast is different from everything else. I also took notes so that I would stay on track.
Yeah.
Um, but okay, Breland knows this, that I want to like change the world. Um, that's like a big goal of mine. Maybe not the world as a whole, but like the world for people, I guess, in general. And so personally, work wise, I have a virtual like journal, is what I call it, because it's really like a journal that I just like post online.
Mhm.
But my like brand is called Field of Grace. And so it's at Field of Grace on Instagram, shameless plug. And that's where I do like writing, videos, lifestyle, random things. Um, at the Field of Grace podcast on TikTok, which I just recently started, but that's like videos. And then annaparish.com is where I have like all of my old writing from when I was like in junior high. So if you read on there, this is probably not going to make any sense, but you're welcome to go back and read. And then the Field of Grace podcast is like my big thing. That's my baby. And so I work a lot on all of those things, but my podcast in particular. Um, and that's like on all streaming platforms. And then professionally, work wise, I work at the CSC. I do a lot of like work with students, I guess. Really, I just like hang out and like listen to people. um, like I pray for people and with people and help plan like events and lead D groups and stuff like that. Obviously there's a lot more, but my favorite part of my job professionally is like just being with people.
Yeah.
um, I think I provide spiritual guidance. I don't know if it's good or not, but I provide like guidance for people within our campus ministry. Um, whether that's on like personal issues or conflicts, like externally, internally.
Hmm.
Um, so that's my favorite part of the job is the people aspect of it.
And she does a really great job, by the way. She won't give herself as much credit as she should, really. She does a whole lot for a whole lot. We definitely thank you for doing a lot of these things that, you know, probably wouldn't have gotten done if you weren't here. Um, I mean, obviously, this CSC as a whole is being, held up by God, but I mean, you're just really good for the job. Like we like she does her job really, really well. She stays active, she talks to new people, like she like engages with everybody, which I think is beautiful. It's one of those things that you can see, Christ in somebody, just in the way that, they engage with other people, how they speak. She's always telling us to go out and talk to new people that are here, which is for our ministry something that, we kind of have struggled with before. But, just continuing that path of, get out, go talk to people and do all those things, like you can just see the makings of, something beautiful. And her podcast is really good too. Uh, yeah, shameless plug for that because the podcast is really, really
Give
good.
it a good listen.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of episodes on there, a whole lot of good listeners, a lot of different people on there, a
Mhm.
lot of different topics, which
Yeah.
it's really good. I enjoyed listening to all the videos that I've listened to,
Mhm.
and you know, like she said, that's her baby. She takes care of that
It is
podcast.
great. I get stuff done.
So the biggest topic that we're gonna get into at all those are just icebreakers.
Mhm.
Y'all know me, I leave the best for last. Like, and
Yes.
the last two topics we're gonna cover are gonna be real topics that I feel like we need to talk about. And with these, I've got the best person to talk about these things because this is
Not
somebody
best, but
who is currently going through a lot of these things that we are about to address. And I know this is something that's affecting a lot of people in our current day and age. So what better way than to make a podcast and talk about these things to spread the word? So obviously you are a woman and obviously you work in ministries. Can you please explain like the tribulations, the trials that you face, the ups and downs, the roller coaster that you've been on?
yeah, it's a roller coaster for sure. Um, I was like looking through like old journals and trying to think about what to say. So I have a lot of notes, and if I talk too long, I told Breland to just tell me to be quiet.
But I
But
won't stop her.
yeah, I am a woman and I am a ministry. So women in ministry, perfect. Um, I've touched like a little bit on this of just like my desire to talk about God from a young age and to ask questions. Um, but like for example, in seventh grade, I was taking my Bible to class. I was reading at school in my free time. In ninth grade, I started my blog. In like 10th grade, I was like giving people Bible verses in the hallway. Just like little things looking back, I'm able to see like okay, God was definitely nudging me into ministry or something bigger.
Mm.
Um, but I couldn't see that at the time, and I was really, really set on nursing. I like, if you know me, I'm very goal oriented, I'm very driven, and I knew from like ninth grade, I was like, I'm gonna be a nurse. And so my high school had like this healthcare track, and I took all of the classes and I loved the classes. And then my senior year of high school, I interned at our local hospital and I worked in like the ICU and like other units. And I loved it. And so when I came to Troy, I was like this dedicated, very confident nursing major. And I had everything well thought out about my life. I was like, I'm gonna make devotionals for nurses. I'm gonna do like all of this Christian work within nursing. Um, and so I've always had like a strong faith.
Right.
Um, and I thought like I'm gonna incorporate my faith wherever I go. I just never thought it would get me to this point, if that makes sense. So I came to Troy in the fall of 2020. And when I met all of my friends, I met them at the CSC, and I was telling them all, I'm like, I'm gonna be nursing. I'm gonna be a nursing major, basically. Um, and so by October, like 3 months in to freshman year, I was like, I think that there's more to my future job than I originally thought.
Hmm.
And so I was really finding purpose in Christian community, especially at the CSC, and I saw myself being more involved in Christian work than I originally suspected. Um, so the first person I ever told I wanted to go into ministry was somebody that was not a Christian. I had met this friend like August of my freshman year, and I'll never forget telling her, like, I want to go into ministry. Obviously, she has no background as a Christian, but
Right.
she was so supportive. She was like, that's awesome. So I share that to say, like, I feel like my story has just been marked by God with like beautiful controversy, really.
Hmm.
Like, the first person I told wasn't even a Christian. Um, the second like people that I told was my family, and they were just all like so surprised because they not that they weren't supportive at all, because my family's like we have a very strong family unit, but they I had like all these scrubs and like stethoscopes from nursing stuff. And so they were just very surprised, but of course really supportive. And then the third person that I told was this girl at the CSC. Her name's Michaela. I don't know her last name now because I think that she's married. But we were sitting like in this prayer huddle after our Wednesday night event, and we were all praying. And she asked for prayer requests, and I was like, freshman year, you like don't know anybody, and I was
Right.
in this like group of strangers, and I was like, I think I'm being called into ministry, and like I really want prayers on that. Like I'll never forget, she was so excited for me, and like everybody in the group was so excited. So I was excited because I had never been like, I don't know, I guess I just remember being like, oh, I can be excited about this. Like, I
Right.
don't know. And so I remember her praying for me, and she was like, "Thank you, God, like for this calling." And she like thanked God for it, and I was like, "Whoa, this is like so cool." What? So in that moment, I was like, "I know I'm supposed to go into ministry." And I know that's not everybody's story. Like everybody's called to ministry at different times, and it doesn't make you like any more holy if you have like one moment compared to like a lifetime of like trying to figure out what your calling is.
Yeah.
But for me, like it was like pretty very evident very early on, like this is what I'm supposed to do. So anyway, I think the thing that really confirmed that calling was also my freshman year. I was taking this anatomy class, and in the middle of the semester I had like a D. If you know me, I'm like I said, very goal oriented. I'm an all A student. And so I had this D, and I just remember like I hated the class, and I dreaded going, and I failed every quiz.
I feel like I know exactly which professor you're talking about.
Gat,
Yeah.
am I allowed to say it on
Yeah, I
here?
mean, you can. I was gonna say it myself.
Gaston,
Yeah,
she's a great woman.
great woman, but that class was something crazy.
She tore me to shreds. Praise God for it though.
Yeah.
She got me to this point. But anyway, I really grieved my future life plans, I think, in failing that class, because for the past 4 years I was like, I'm gonna be this awesome nurse. And then I had to drop the class. And so I'm like, what even does my life hold at this point? Um, but in dropping that class was this beautiful moment where I realized like what hospital chaplaincy was. Which if you don't know what that is, it's like basically you are able to like pray with grieving families, you're able to help nurses and doctors and hospital staff spiritually, and you're just like really a rock for healthcare communities. So I was able to talk to like 5 hospital chaplains when I would have been studying.
Right.
It was like it opened, I was able to see like God open that door for conversations. And so anyway, throughout college, I had health sciences as my major, and that's been really cool because it's like I'm able to see the like healthcare setting of things and get a background and get insight on hospital chaplaincy that most people that have like spiritual backgrounds haven't seen. So I learned about all that stuff. At this point, I had never faced adversity within declaring ministry as something that I wanted to do. But I also never had showed interest in preaching or speaking in front of people. So keep that in mind. This summer after my freshman year, I worked at a summer camp, and that's where I met some of my best friends. And they have been such rocks for me. They encouraged me throughout that summer to use my voice more. They had acknowledged that there was like something special within me that people like had never pointed out before. They had helped me to dream bigger, which are things that they like still encourage me to do. Um, they helped me to become more confident, most importantly, in my calling. And so for that camp, we had traveled. I was a camp counselor for students. We had traveled to like Virginia, Texas, North Carolina, which this is where I fell in love with North Carolina. Everything's very connected in my story. And anyway, so that summer I learned a lot about leadership styles and the beauty of community and people. And so one particular moment regarding women in ministry, because I know that's what we're talking about from that summer, is we had our pastor that traveled with us was a woman. Her name's Milligan, and I'll never forget one of my campers. We like rotate um, groups of campers every week. So it was a new group of campers, and I think it was on the first or second day of their week. A camper came up to me. She was a girl. She was like maybe age 8, and she was like, I want to be just like Milligan. And that was such a beautiful moment where my eyes were opened, and I was like, oh my gosh, like future generations of girls, especially, like they're paying attention, and a woman in the pulpit like Milligan, like that actually matters.
Hmm.
Like that's actually making a difference. So, um, after that summer, I came back to school and I came back to our campus ministry. And you know, because you were a freshman when I was a sophomore,
Yep.
but we had this huge sophomore class, and then we had this huge freshman class come in, and most of our seniors were gone. Um, and I was only like 19, but I was like, well, nobody's stepping up. Like somebody has to step up. We had like so many more freshmen, and none of the guys were stepping up. So I was like, okay, like
True story.
I I guess like because I saw honestly like a real spiritual need within our campus ministry, and I had learned like all of these things at summer camp, and I was like, this seems like the perfect opportunity that God's putting in front of me to apply what I loved to my own community in Troy. Um, but it was also really hard and it was really heavy. Um, just because like I was 19 and I was in school and I was working and I was also like in charge of all of our D groups and like leading book clubs and writing all of our small group curriculum. And like so many of my older friends had left. So I'm like trying to discern my call into ministry, but like there just seems like a whirlwind of things going on around me. Um, I was also at the time struggling with depression and anxiety. So, with all of that, I'm like learning how to really lean on God alone, which now I'm able to see. I'm thankful for the hard times in that year, my sophomore year of college, because like I had no one to lean on except for God.
Hmm.
Um, and so like I think that now that made my faith a lot stronger. Um, because I didn't have a choice, like I had to lean on God.
Right.
And so anyway, through all of that, I'm taking my like sense of adventure that I learned I had when I worked at the previous summer, and I'm like, I want to go to Montana. Which is like I just felt like a very strong tug on my heart to do ministry in Montana. So I ended up getting this internship at this church outside of Yellowstone National Park. Um, this is when like the hard parts of discerning my calling into women in ministry, I guess, comes into play, is that summer. I like had told everyone that I was going and I was so excited. Everyone was so excited for me. Before I even left, I got coffee with an old friend from high school. She was like this really close friend of mine, like a best friend. And I told her, I was like, when I go to Montana, like preaching is a part of my job title. I'm gonna get to preach. Um, and I remember her just like sort of sitting there. She didn't like say anything. I was like, change the subject.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and over time, like throughout my summer in Montana, I'd noticed our friendship shift. And during the summer, I would text her, and like some of her responses were short. And so, like, eventually I had to realize over the summer, like, oh, like it's the preaching thing.
Right.
And so that was the first time I'd ever faced like hardship with my calling. And I think, like, unfortunately, that was sort of a catalyst of hardships that I've since now experienced. But I just remember being like taken aback because I was like, oh, like with my calling, like my friendships are on the line.
Yeah.
In Montana for 3 months. And I was like, if you've ever been to Montana, it's like beautiful. So I wake up with like beautiful mountains, and I'm just like, that's when I really learned about the awe of God and like creation. Um, and so that was really cool, and just like probably the best 3 months of my life, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
in some ways. Obviously hard with things I'm about to share, but um, I just like when I worked at the church, I would do like community outreach. I worked at a coffee shop part time. I would do like I was involved in the service, the worship service, and like I would make bulletins. So I sort of had like different jobs. But the I think Montana is where I like fell in love with God the most. And I think Montana is a very pivotal part of my faith journey. And where I also like fell in love with who God was calling me to be. So um, the first time I experienced hardship within church, because I never experienced like discrimination as a woman growing up in
Right.
my church, which I know like we both have similar like faith stories
Yeah.
with women. But the first time I experienced discrimination, I was supposed to read scripture in the service, which I did like most Sundays. And I was pulled aside by one of the women leaders of the church. And in the church, a little bit of context is it's right outside of Yellowstone National Park. And so church members will dress like casually, as well as people that are visiting. We get a lot of visitors because, like, when you go into the park, a lot of people are going to hike. So they'll just
Mm-hmm.
come to church in like
Right.
their hiking clothes. And so I that morning had decided to wear like this long sleeve shirt and my Patagonia shorts. I've never seen those before. They're like almost mid thigh. They're very modest shorts. They were not like booty shorts or anything like that. And so I was wearing that, and this woman later in the church pulled me aside like right before the service, and she was like, "You need to go change your shorts, Anna." I was like, like I thought she was joking. And she was like, if you go up there and read scripture like that, you're gonna cause the men to stumble. And I just remember like being taken aback. Yeah, like my legs are gonna cause men of the church to stumble. Like that seems like we have a way bigger problem if that's the reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like what I'm wearing is going to affect the way the men of the church like listen to scripture. And I just remember like it was right before the service, and so I had to run to my trailer and like go change. Um, and thankfully, like after the service, I had like finished everything and like done everything I needed to do. And over the summer, I had a mentor like through the program that I was working with. I'd been given a mentor that was a woman pastor in Oklahoma, and I like called her. I was just like, you know, when you like angry cry.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? Like, what is going on? And so she like had experienced things like that before, and
Yeah.
she like empathized and listened, and I was really thankful for like her steady presence. So that happened, and I was very hurt by that. Um, and so fast forward a week, I had my first sermon ever scheduled. I've preached before, like before this in home church growing up, like when I was in the youth group, but
Yeah.
never like being hired for this specific role. And so I was super excited. I felt so much like peace. Um, like up front at church in particular, when I would read scripture, I just knew like I'm supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Which like if you knew me before college, I was very anxious. I didn't like speaking in front of people. I'm still a very introverted person, and so the fact that I like actually enjoyed like leading in front of churches was just this like total God thing. So the Sunday of my very first sermon, there was a well-known couple within the church that like didn't show up. And I remember there being like some murmurs, and I just like sort of pushed it aside, and I was like, it's weird that they didn't show up, but whatever.
Okay.
Um, the pastor that morning, his name's Benny, such like Benny's awesome. I'm still friends with him to this day. 75-year-old man that's blind and hikes in the backcountry. Just like this epic, like God fearing man that just is awesome. Anyway, he's introducing me to the church. A lot of like visitors during the summers, and so there were a lot of new families that morning. And as he's introducing me, he's like, Anna's gonna give the message, and he points to me. There's like a family of like 8 behind me and like a family of 6 in the back. And like all of them got up. And like people were murmuring like in the church. And um I remember like it's like these full family units of like mom, dad, so many kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget like looking around and like the families are like frantically grabbing their children, like walking out all the doors of the church, front, sides, back. Um, and I remember being like, oh my gosh, like, is this because of me? I just remember feeling like responsible for it and like
Right.
shame because like I never want to be the reason that somebody like doesn't experience God.
Mm-hmm.
And so the dad of the family behind me, he like let his wife and the kids exit the church, and then he came close to me and he was like, God bless you, like right in my face. And obviously I did not feel very blessed in that moment.
Yeah.
And I remember like tearing up and being so confused, and like I knew I had to pull it together. So I preached my sermon and relied on God's strength because I didn't have like any of my own. And then after, like I had people come up to me, and like all of these were strangers, and like some church members, but I remember this one dad of a family that stayed. He like came up to hug me, and I just remember like tearing up.
Yeah.
And he was like, my mom's a pastor, and I want to say like you're doing good things, and I support you. And I just wanted to like let you know that. And, like another man, it meant a lot that these were men that were
Yeah.
saying these things to me. Another man like came up to me and he was like, "Well done, sister." And I was like, I really felt like genuine, like God is speaking those words through this man. Like this is concentrated peace.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord is in this moment. And before I preached, I had prayed like, Lord, I prayed very specifically, Lord, let me glow. Like let your love just like shine through me. And so I had this lady come up to me after and she was like, I just want to let you know, like, you glow. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, God is really in this place. I'm getting like, like, while I was heartbroken, I had never experienced like, there's like 15, 20 people that like walked out of this church. There are also people that are like staying, and I'm getting confirmation from strangers that are saying, like, hey, like, I see you, I see that you're a woman, and like, you are doing good things. So that's sort of a long answer, but I'm preaching like with courage throughout that summer. And like some friends from the CSC, like Ashton and Sophia, and like some other girls, like watched my sermons virtually.
Mm-hmm.
And like that meant so much to me. And I just like I was having people tell me like, hey, like you have a real spiritual gift. And so like while things were hard, obviously, like I said, I was feeling this like unfathomable peace. Um, and I think that that peace called me to stay even when I really like wanted to walk away.
Right.
So
That's a good that's a good answer. And so like again, if there's anybody to, talk to these things about, like Anna would be up there on my list. I'm sure y'all will figure out later on, like I grew up with a woman preacher, so like me and my, not really preference, but I guess my ideology and what I believe and what I think, obviously seeing a woman preach, uh for me, and I can't speak for a lot of people, like just for me in itself, like that should be something that's normal.
Mhm.
Like, cause that was normal for me. If anything, seeing a guy get up and preach was that wasn't normal for me.
Right,
Like
right.
and she's a great pastor. Even the pastor we have now at the church is that's her daughter. So like that's, two women preacher who
Yeah.
I've been, getting preached for majority of my life.
Mhm.
So to me, seeing women preach, that's nothing like, I just kind of look at it, well, I don't look at a woman preacher, I look at a preacher.
Right.
That's kind of how I view
Yeah.
it because, you know, that's how I've grown up. And obviously there are, people who haven't grown up in that type of, you know, fathom or generation. And my mother would always say it's a, generational thing.
Mm.
And I think, maybe now, I don't really know how, because I haven't really looked around it yet, but I think our generation is a little bit more, open and receptive to,
Mhm.
women preaching than, our previous generation is. So, do you think it's something that, maybe could be changed within time, like as, time goes on?
Yeah. I mean, I think it like requires people to be open-minded
Yeah.
and people to be willing to be uncomfortable. I was telling a friend the other day, actually yesterday, I was telling her like unity is awesome and that's needed in churches, but you can't sow seeds of peace in silence. And
Hmm.
like sometimes that requires like speaking out and rocking the boat.
Right.
So, yeah, I think our generation though, I feel like is so good at speaking out and so I foresee like a lot of good things coming from women in churches.
Yeah. Which is, I think that's good
Mm.
because if you like sit there and have somebody who's a woman preaching, um as my mother would say, sometimes you have to take the fish and remove the bones. Like
Mhm.
that's how she looks at it. And
Mhm.
she tells me that when I'm listening to other preachers who maybe could have a bad reputation or something's going on behind the scenes. She says you got to learn how to take the message with what they're saying. And I feel like that older generations could probably use some of that. I know that like, seeing a woman preach isn't something that's new, but you know, if you have something to say that, God is speaking to you, like
Why wouldn't you
why wouldn't you
say?
want to, why wouldn't you say it and why wouldn't you listen? So
Right.
like to me it's something that, I've never been I've never understood the, if I see a woman preach, I'll get up and leave. Why?
Mhm.
Why'd you come to church?
Mhm.
You didn't come to church to see a man preach. You came to church to
Mhm.
hear the word.
Mm.
And if somebody's giving you that, regardless of what the gender is, like at least take in the word,
Yeah.
right? You may not agree with the person who's up there, but at least take in the word. And so that's always been kind of like a mind-boggling thing for me because I'm like, if I come to church dressed up early in the morning, like y'all know I'm not a morning person. So if I get up at that point, like I'm there for a reason, and I'm not gonna get up and just
Right.
walk out. So I know that's something that probably like is one of those keystone moments in your life is just that experience in and
Mhm.
of itself. So, the last question to kind of wrap all that up, obviously, your calling has kind of affected your life and the people around you and the things around you. So, if you could like get into detail about, that aspect of how, you and the world around you has kind of changed because of your calling.
Yeah, I think both of the questions are really like combined. Recently, after my summer in Montana, that's when I accepted that my calling is going to change my life.
Hmm.
Like my life personally. Not I wasn't focused on like changing other people's lives. But that's when I sort of had to sit with like, is this something that I want to like not deal with, but I am gonna like continually have these situations like this stuff I dealt with in Montana. Um, and so I think like coming back to Troy from Montana, it was my junior year of college, was like probably the hardest thing that I've ever done because I'm dealing with like, okay, I have this calling, Lord, and like I know I'm supposed to use this. Now, like, what do I do with it? Because being in Troy, it's this very small country southern town, which is awesome.
Right.
There's some people, but like having my calling in this setting has been very difficult. And so I began my junior year of college speaking out more because I had learned how to do that in Montana. Um, but when I started to use my voice, people did not like that. And I am a people pleaser. And so I'm very gentle. I don't like, Breland knows, I don't like shaking the boat, which he has told me before, like sometimes you have to do that. But, and you know what? Sometimes Breland does that for me. And so I like really had to learn how to lean on other people sometimes to speak for me, which I'm very independent and I don't like people to speak for me.
Hmm.
But I'm like, all right, Breland's like he's gonna speak for me. And I learned how to lean on God and in that uncomfortableness and in that heartache. There's like a lot of hope as well because I started touring seminaries my junior year of college. And obviously, I'm looking at seminaries with women, but I'm seeing like I had so much hope because I was like, all these women are like in these huge, like awesome positions.
Hmm.
And, like, there's hope for me in that aspect. Um, and all the while, I've had friends like my friend Hannah and Davis, who I met at the summer camp that I worked at. Like, everything is so divinely interconnected. And they like always cheer me on. I have like Ashton and Spencer, who like I preached at. I met this pastor in Montana. It's this long story, but he hired me. He has a church in Georgia, so he hired me for a weekend to preach.
Hmm.
Like Ashton and Spencer traveled 3 hours to come watch me preach. Um, Obviously Breland and like Cassidy and Quintera, I literally met with yesterday who just like listened to me rant about things. Like Evie and Samantha, obviously there's so many more, and like my precious family and church back home. Um, that like y'all have loved me and supported me even in like the tears and even when it's hard. Um, and like Breland knows, it's like constantly heartbreaking to have gifts that I believe that I have and I can't use them.
Right.
And not only that, but to see other people have the chance to use
Hmm.
those things. Um, but anyway, that's the end of my trials. I won't speak anymore about that. Um, I told Braylon a lot of them are not wise to share right now. From the end of my junior year to now, senior year and through. Um, so you guys read my book. Have me back on the podcast in like 2 years.
Yeah, we'll get her back.
We'll talk about. But anyway, one thing that I still know is like God is still opening doors. Like Breland organized time for me to preach in our campus theater, which is like the coolest thing ever. And I'm like still getting job offers in North Carolina, like big, awesome jobs. And like I got this full ride to seminary. And I sometimes get like girls and guys from the CSC like pull me aside and be like didn't know women could do this and like you're doing it and that's awesome. And so those moments and those people remind me like my life is going to look different, but it's still like it can still be good. Um and so anyway, hold on. I have like a few more things I knew I wanted to say. Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say, like I hope that through my calling I'm able to change people's minds. And I hope that my life is like inspiring to people and that I can like change the way people view roles within the church. Um, I've heard a lot of like harsh things as a woman. Like, people have told me like I love you, but like I don't support you. And it's like how I've had to learn to be okay with that statement. For a lot of no. and people can't tell me why they think no, but they tell me no. I've heard like that I'm sinning, or somebody said that I was alone in this. I've heard crazy things, y'all. Crazy things. I've heard you're too emotional, it's not wise. And so there are days where I'll just call my mom and I'll be like crying and I'll be like, I cannot do this. um, honestly, because it's easier to just not follow through. And there were moments within my junior year where I just remember being like, Lord, like, please open another door, please, or like, please show me something else. But God keeps opening doors for me to preach, and as many no's as I get twice the amount of yeses. I've learned to just, if somebody tells me no, it's another door that's being opened. And so, like I said, I'm aware that this calling is going to be a lot, that it's sacrificial in a lot of ways. With any Christian, I think that's true, even if you're not like in ministry. Um, but I've also had to learn to be okay with like, okay, God is like planting seeds that I just can't see right now. And like that doesn't mean that there aren't being seeds that, you know, there's still like good that's coming from this.
Right.
I also think like within, especially the church in America, women, especially in the South too, have only ever seen men lead. And so that's what I've found. In some capacity, like some churches will like let a woman be in a children's minister role, which is awesome. And like some women make great children's ministers. That's just not the case for me. I don't feel called to that. While I do feel called to chaplaincy, I also would love to be a senior pastor one day. And like we've said, for Breland and I, our faith has been built by women. Like not only has it been formed by women, but like it's flourished under like women leadership.
Yeah.
And so I think for some people, like, I don't know, our faith is so real and authentic. At least Breland's is. Mine is. But like what I hope to change is like I want to be that woman for people where like people flourish under my leadership. Um but oh, also I want to continue to prove people wrong. Like I was saying, continuing writing and podcasting, and being vulnerable. I video like in podcasts a lot of vulnerable moments of my life. And I value like sensitivity and honesty. Um, so all in all, the journey of like discerning my call into ministry in Troy has not been easy. Like as we've discussed, it's discouraging. But like I didn't grow up wanting to do this, which like if you're questioning my call, it would be so much easier for me not to do this.
Right.
Um, like I don't want to some days, you know? And so anyway, I tell people like I didn't enter roles like this to shake things up because that's just not my personality. Um, just happened, and to me, that's a yes from God. That like only God could have put me here. Um, and so if you're listening and you're like, oh, women like shouldn't be in the church, that's fine. You can believe that. But like my goal and my hope, like through talking with Breland, and really it's just been me rambling, but my goal, like through talking with Breland, is not to change your mind or to defend my theological beliefs. Although I think you should reread Second Timothy, because you're taking that verse out of context. But um, my hope is really just to, like encourage future generations of the church, as a whole. And if you're in churches that like have a lot of young people, it's so important to encourage young girls, young women to like to help them through discerning their call of faith. Um, and so I guess like my message to anyone that's like a young girl or young woman that's like even thinking about ministry, I just want to say like you're not alone. And there's people like Breland that like want to help you through that. And like Breland cheers me on like all the time. So even in the hard, like people are complicated, but like there is good. There's people like Breland. Like, um, the church, people are complicated and intricate and imperfect. And so that means that the church is too, because the
Right.
church is full of people. Um, my message to young girls is like, God is not ashamed of you. Um, God is alive in you just as much as he is in a man. Um, the church is better with you in it. We need women and men. And so the message of my podcast, really quick, is like becoming confident in God's faithfulness. And so I believe I'm confident that God is just as faithful to speak through women as he is through men. Um, so I hope that like through my work, I'm changing the world and that every little bit of God's faithfulness that I've seen throughout my story is evident to me. Like, let me rephrase that. I hope like my calling continues to change the present and the future of the church. That I'm able to look back throughout the hard times, like the past 4 years, and that I'm able to see like God was still faithful. And so I hope that God's faithfulness is evident through my story.
And since Anna was singing my praises, I have to sing hers too. No, she's put in a lot of work, and a lot of us who are, I guess, behind the scenes and even in the scenes, we can see a lot of the work that she's done, not only for this ministry, but herself and just Christianity as a whole, like the church as a whole. We need servants and workers, and I think that today we have a shortage of that. So, uh, for me, seeing someone dedicate their whole lives to that in and of itself is just, to me, it's beautiful because this is somebody saying, um, right before Jesus goes to get crucified, he says in a prayer, not my will but yours. And that's kind of the same mindset that, someone like Anna is taking, where it's like this, she said it like, this is not what I wanted to do, but like I'm doing it. And, even though I didn't want to do it, like I still love what I'm doing right now. And, that just shows character development and that God is, you know, putting you in positions where you're learning and you're experiencing things
Mhm,
before you go to this certain area that you're supposed to go to.
mhm,
And kind of how you're taking a lot of these, criticisms or taking a lot of these, stray looks and all of these things. It's like, you know, where do you find the strength to keep going? Where do you find, the hope at? Like you have to rely on something bigger than yourself.
mhm,
And that's something that I think you can preach to the whatever they say to the cows come home. Y'all know the saying. You can literally preach that in your sleep, relying on God's strength, relying on his love, relying on the hope of him alone. And to see you do that consistently is, I mean, it's something that like I want in my life to say, hey, she ain't got a lot of stuff, nobody's really helping her out. We're not giving her as much as she needs, and yet she's still going. Where does she find that extra gear from? And, you know, me seeing it personally, like, yes, I'm more inclined to want to help, obviously, you and help as many other people as I can because I feel, obviously, um, I'm not the one that's getting up there doing the preaching or, leading the worship or anything, but I want to help people get to that point
mhm,
to where they can use their voice, to where they can use their God-given abilities. And I believe that's something that, God has blessed me with, is the ability to help others in any way that I can. And I try to do that. Again, she did give a sermon on campus that was amazing and it was nice. And I'm not taking any credit for it because she
Take
did
credit.
it. I'm not.
A month getting stuff together.
Yeah. She preached it though. Like, she preached it and it was amazing. It was beautiful. If you were there, like, it was really good. And so, yeah, that's all the questions that I have. Again, you can check out all of her links wherever I'm putting it on the screen. I don't know. It'll be somewhere. Like, you have to send me all your links so I can get them
Yeah,
all
I'll
in
send
here.
it to you.
And yeah, so y'all can give her a quick follow, like, look at all her stuff, subscribe to the podcast. Not only hers but ours too.
Mhm.
So yeah, this was a good interview. And you have anything else you want to say?
I don't think so.
All right. We are out of here.